You've been pushing really hard for the last 55, 56 years. So give yourself a chance to heal and rest. And in that healing is when you'll start to hear that very small voice that says, remember when you used to like to play the piano? And you'll start to hear that little voice. And once you hear it, you start to see the doors. You start to see the opportunities. And the first door you walk through may not be the right one, but, try it. What have you got to lose, right? Try it.
Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Late Bloomer Living, where we celebrate curiosity, courage, and the joy of reinvention at any age. I am Yvonne Marchese, your host, and I'm so glad you're here. And I want to know, are you feeling stuck about what's next in your life? If so, this is the perfect episode for you. I'm so glad you tuned in, because in this conversation, my guest, Wendy Green, reminds us that reinvention isn't about changing, it's about remembering who you are. Wendy is all about showing us that life after 50 and life after retirement is not about slowing down. It's about asking what's next. She is the host of Boomer Banter, a podcast where she's had more than 240 conversations about how to age vibrantly, stay curious, and embrace possibility. She's also the spark behind the Age Wise Collaborative, which is a community of podcasters that I happen to be part of that helps women over 50 lift each other up and share their stories. There's so much gold in this episode for you if you're feeling stuck. In our conversation, Wendy talks about starting before you're ready, pushing past the inner gremlins of self-doubt, and why reinvention isn't about changing who you are. It's about remembering yourself and letting that girl shine. So without further ado, here's Wendy Green. Let's go. Wendy, thank you so much for being with me today.
Yvonne, it is such a pleasure. I was really looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. So let's dig right in. What inspired you to start Boomer Banter?
Well, like you, it was a COVID podcast that, COVID inspired me, because I had been a life coach, and I had been very aware of how difficult it was for people over 50, once they lost a job, to try and get employment again. And when COVID hit, I lost my job too, surprise, surprise.
Yeah.
And knew that a lot of people in this age group were going to be really impacted. And I wanted to let people know that we're not done, that, even if finding the next job may be difficult, there is so much value in what we've known, what we've learned, that we can still bring to the world and to the people around us. And that was kind of my impetus. I had been in training and development and coaching, and, I was like, I can do this. I can talk to people and get them inspired and get them to believe that they can do it. But Yvonne, I didn't know much about podcasts, so.
I feel you, sister.
Right?
Right. Yes.
But even more, I said, well, I'm going to start this as a Facebook Live.
Okay.
Right?
I was just going to say, what was your first step then in launching? So you went Facebook
Live.
Okay.
And which is why my show is still a live show. So I started on Facebook, and then I learned that I could stream to Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube at the same time.
Amazing, right?
We did that.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I can download the audio. I can put it out to all these podcast apps. So it's been like a progression of learning, but everybody thinks it's so weird that it's live. But you know what? Maybe I was ahead of the curve, because now everybody wants a video, on YouTube. And
yeah.
So,
yeah. You know what I love about that process that you just described? It's the idea of starting before you're ready, really.
For sure.
And my business coach always says, you can't steer a parked car. So you literally like started the car rolling, and then we're just like, oh, well, we can do this and now we can do that. And I can hear, my audience thinking right now, oh, all that tech, blah, you know what I mean? But y- and I feel the same way about tech. I am not a, a natural, let's just say, when it comes to adopting technology. But when you have something that I think clearly is pulling you forward, like a mission, like
Hmm.
you have, it
Right.
helps you to move through the challenges of learning new skills, you
It
know.
does. And it helps when you ask for help.
Mm,
I asked several people, how do I do this? And what do I do next? And, you develop a process of how you do each step. And a lot of that was because I was just calling people, asking them, Zooming with them, saying,
yes.
how do I do this? And people, you know what? People are wonderful, right? You ask for help, they are so happy to help. And then I went to my first podcast conference, Yvonne.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I was so nervous because, you have this image of podcasters, right? And they're all young and they've got all these piercings, all these tattoos, right? And I'm like, oh my
Love
gosh.
that that's your podcaster vision.
Right. And I'm like, I'm not going to fit in. What am
Right.
I doing here? And so I called a meetup through this podcast meeting, big conference in Denver,
Yeah.
and said, anybody over 50, let's meet at this place. We suddenly had like 12 or 15 people there. I was like, oh, thank God, there's more people.
That's fantastic. I love that you did that. Good for you.
But it was such a learning experience. It's like there's other people trying to encourage people in our age group in all different areas. They were talking about dating and purpose and travel and, just building things. It was so cool to find
What
all these
year was
different
it that
people.
you went to that podcast convention?
Oh gosh, that's probably been 3 years ago now.
Okay, so that was that the beginning of getting the idea for the Age-Wise Collaborative? Is that
So
newer?
insightful of you.
Oh,
You. Yes, because at that conference, they had a keynote speaker,
uh-huh.
and he talked about the different age groups that listen to podcasts.
Uh-huh.
And people over 50, it was a very small percentage that listen to podcasts.
Yes.
So at first, you're like, oh, well, that's not good. I want to reach more people and help people feel good about this stage of life. And then I thought, well, no, wait a minute. That's actually an opportunity, right? Because look at all of the people that are out there that haven't been reached yet that we can talk to.
Exactly.
And that's why I got the first idea for this Age-Wise Collaborative, because I thought, well, Yvonne has an audience, and I have an audience, and Bev has an audience, and, you know, um, Gail and Catherine have an audience, and we just need to tell each other's audiences about the great things that we're doing, because
Yeah.
it all talks in the space that people are looking to grow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have to say, when I had the idea for the podcast, so the idea sparked sometime, I'm going to say 2017, 2018
Wow.
is when I had the idea for the podcast. And I purely was stopping myself because I didn't know how to do a podcast. Number one reason. The second reason was my kids were still younger at that point and busy momming, photography business that I was trying to grow. There were a lot of good reasons for me saying, putting the brakes on and going, not now. And but what I'll just say that what prompted me forward and launched me forward was that the idea wouldn't leave me alone.
Mm.
It kept niggling at me. And finally, I got sick of myself. I got sick of my excuses. and I drew a line in the sand in December of 2019, and I put out a Facebook post to keep myself accountable. I said, I've had this idea, I've been putting it off, and I now realize it's imposter syndrome is the real reason I'm not doing this. I've gone off on a tangent, but I'll bring it back around to why I'm telling this story, which is that when I decided to start the podcast, I started doing research to see if there were other podcasts like it out there. And there were a few.
In 2017, not too many.
2019,
19.
2018, 2019, I would say is when I really started going, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And I started thinking about what am I going to name it? What am I going to do? What can I bring to, what can I do that is unique?
Sure.
And I'm looking for podcasts, and there weren't a lot,
No,
but now there are.
there
There are
are.
a lot of us who are older who are passionate about talking about living well, whatever our age is. And I am so excited that there are a lot of us now because for me, it's proof of concept that that we want to talk about it. There must be more people who don't want to start a podcast who want to hear about it,
Exactly.
right? Like I feel like it was like a timing thing of I just kind of happy you started at the same time, I started at the same time. I know a ton of other podcasters who started in COVID, and I love the idea of us all um, working together to broaden the message to get it out there.
So was your original idea what is today, or has it
Pretty
evolved?
close, pretty
Yeah.
close. I think there's a nuance that has changed in that when I was starting the podcast, I was really thinking about reinvention in midlife and for all, like from a self-improvement sort of angle, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
I think I was very interested in being a better version of myself.
Mm.
And what I have come to realize is that reinvent, somebody said this in a room I was in Clubhouse some years ago, and I wish I could give her credit for it. But she said reinvention isn't about changing yourself, it's about changing how you think about yourself. And I think
Uh-huh.
my brain popped off my body at that point, and I was like, yes,
That's
that's
it.
it. It's
Yes.
about getting I've come to realize that my real goal is to get more comfortable with who I've always been and let
Mm-hmm.
her come out and play more. And that's where my playfulness inquiry is going, is like, how can I be as playful as I can about everything in my life, whether it's work or playtime or, whatever it is? How can I step into everything with a sense of adventure and experimentation?
Yeah, and there's a quote by David Bowie that says, aging is when we get to be who we really are supposed to be.
Yes.
And I think that's absolutely true, that we have put a lot of ourselves on hold because we were raising families and we were working and we were paying bills and, all that stuff. And now it is an opportunity to rediscover. My reinvention was a little bit farther down the path. It wasn't so much midlife
Mm-hmm.
as it was, what do you do when you stop working? Because so many people lose themselves then. They have never really had a hobby because they didn't have time. And they had a definition of who they were. And now they're like, well, who am I now? I may be a wife or a mother, but my kids don't really need mothering so much anymore, and so who am I? What do I do? And that was more where my reinvention vision was going, was to help people realize, like I said in the beginning, you're not done. You still have so much to give to this world. So let's just figure out what that is and go do it.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Figure out what it is and go do it because it's going to be different for you than it is for anybody else.
That's right. And you've got another, if you retire at, say, 65 or 70, you've got another 20, 30 years possibly.
Oh my gosh, that is exactly what that is the whole point of me doing this podcast. I had the revelation when I was 48. My 40s were rough, Wendy.
Mm.
Just say my
40s are
40s
never easy.
were rough. It was a trash talk in my head about
Mhm.
getting older that I
Mhm.
didn't even realize was happening. All I knew is I was looking in the mirror going, who the heck is that?
I know.
And I realized something needed to significantly shift and made some changes. And the aha moment came from when I started to feel better because of the changes that I'd made. And I
Mhm.
had that revelation of if I feel better now than I have over the past 10 years, and if I can keep taking care of myself, keep feeling good, I might have another 20, 30 years ahead of me that can be productive, that can be something new and different. And why am I limiting myself? Why am I
Yeah.
telling myself it's all over?
There is so much pressure from society, right? Our culture does not value older people. You see the commercials, you see the jokes, the comedians, everybody talks about aging as decline. And I think that's why what we're doing is so important because we're flipping that script. We're saying no. Aging is all about what's next, and the possibilities. And it's interesting what you said about getting older and looking in the mirror, and we've bought into those messages, right? And we want to be forever young. we right, wait, I don't like those wrinkles, but it's part of what we've earned, right? By all of the experiences that we've had and learning to embrace ourselves and where we're at. And I mean that in a positive way, not like em- embrace and give up and go, okay, well, I've earned it. I'm done. No, embrace it and go, wow, look at all of the experiences I've had, all of the people I've met and influenced, because we've all had influence on our families and people we've worked with. And what else is important to me? What is important to me that I can still do? And I think we can, even though my mother disagrees with me sometimes. She's 95 and she's tired. But I think we can still influence, make a difference in the way we show up in the world, you know, even if we're not as physically able when we're 95.
I'm a believer, Wendy. I do. And who knows? Talk to us when we're 95, right?
That's right. That's
But
right.
um but I've seen examples of people who are 95 who maybe do, like, I can think of my friend's dad right now who he, is he's got physical challenges, but he
Mhm.
just published another book.
Oh gosh, that's fantastic.
You know what I mean? I'm like, so I think we're only limited by what we tell ourselves.
I think so too. I think that is the big message here,
Hmm.
and we need to listen to that trash talk, like you said, of what we tell ourselves. And, in coaching, we have this philosophy of this belief of the gremlin. Have you heard about that?
Tell me more.
Okay. So the gremlin is this part of our being that came in to protect us, like in school when, people might make fun of us, or we don't want to get up in front of the class and talk because we're going to be embarrassed or whatever. The gremlin was the voice that was saying, it's okay. You don't have to do that. You can just sit back here and be quiet and don't be noticed and whatever it is that the gremlin was telling you.
Hmm.
Well, we're now grown women, grown ass women, right?
Exactly.
And we don't need that protection anymore. but the voice is still there.
Mm-hmm.
The voice is still telling you, Yvonne, what are you thinking? You're going to go start a podcast? Come on. Who are
That
you to
voice
do?
was so loud.
Right?
Yes.
And it's when we get to the point where we're like, mm-mm-mm, I don't need that from you anymore. You were helpful back then, but now look at me. I am very, very capable, strong, confident. I can do this. So you hush.
Thank you very much. I
That's
got it
right.
from here.
I got it from here. Absolutely.
You talk about aging as an opportunity to follow the paths that we may have left behind, right? Um, can you share an example from your own life of where you revisited something meaningful to you?
Mm, so interesting. It's funny that you ask that because when I was young, right, I grew up, the Vietnam War was going on, civil rights was going on. And I used to watch Walter Cronkite on the news, and everybody trusted Walter Cronkite. And I used to think, that's who I want to be. I
Mm.
want to be that voice of trust that puts out a good message that makes people feel good. And I realized a couple of years into this podcast, wow, I'm kind of living that dream now, you
I just
know?
got the chills.
I know.
Got the chills. I love it.
And it wasn't anything I trained for or planned for, but you put that vision out there and suddenly it manifests. It's so cool.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to anybody listening now who's over 50 who may feel stuck or uncertain about what's next?
Yeah. That's a hard place to be,
It
right?
is.
And I think it's hard, Yvonne, because we've been trained always find the answer, right? Like if you don't know what you're going to study in school, well, then go see your counselor and get help in what you're going to study. If you lose a job, well, immediately go on the job boards and start finding that next job.
Hmm.
And when we get to that point of feeling stuck, like, what am I going to do next? We don't necessarily want to find that other job. But we don't know how to navigate that. And so I would encourage people to say, just kind of relax into it. Think of it as taking a walk in a beautiful forest and appreciating the smell of the leaves and the beautiful colors that you're seeing in the flowers and the trickle of the water as it's going by. And just give yourself time to heal almost. You've been pushing really hard for the last 55, 56 years. So give yourself a chance to heal and rest. And in that healing is when you'll start to hear that very small voice that says, remember when you used to like to play the piano? Or remember when you used to like to, teach or mentor the little children in your neighborhood and you would, help them with their reading or something? Remember when you used to?
Hmm.
And you'll start to hear that little voice. And then you can once you hear it, you start to see the doors, you start to see the opportunities. And the first door you walk through may not be the right one, but, try it. What have you got to lose, right? Try it. You might meet somebody that's really interesting. You might find, wow, that's exactly what I want. Or you might try it and go, okay, I tried it. That wasn't it. So what's the next little door that might open? And look at it as an experiment. It's an opportunity to try different doors and see which one really feels welcoming and you really belong there. So that would be my advice, give yourself time, listen for that voice, and then walk through the doors.
I'm also hearing in what you just said a lot of the idea of being kind to yourself,
Kind to yourself.
because
Absolutely.
I've been in that space, and I every now and again go back to that space of where you feel stuck, and it's really hard to to relax into it. It's
Hmm.
really, it can feel like there's an urgency for me. I very often feel like I need to urgently fix this,
Hmm.
you know?
Because it's
And
uncomfortable.
right, it is so uncomfortable. It's that whole thing of having to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
That's right. And sometimes
Hey,
getting a coach is really a helpful thing to do. I
oh,
think,
getting a coach, yes. Oh, that I was just going to ask you. That is perfect, perfect.
yeah,
I was going to ask you about your coaching. When did you become a coach? Like, you had a whole other career before, and then at some point you went and got training as a coach.
I
Tell me
did.
a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, excuse me. I became a coach in 2013. I became certified as a coach. Um, Prior to that, I was in training and development in corporate America for
Mhm.
most of my career.
So
And
those kind of line up.
they do, don't they?
Yes, they do.
Interesting. I
Interesting.
know. And it was a friend of mine who was a coach. She was actually working with me. And one day she said to me, "You know what? You'd be a really good coach." And I was like, "Ah, that's it. That's what I want to do." So it was a very intensive training program. You learn a lot about yourself, but it helped me move into that next realm of what I really wanted to do, and to be a good listener, and to be I've always thought of myself, even when I was a mom, as being setting high expectations, having like inspiring my kids, encouraging my kids, you can do it. You can do it. Go, go, go. And I think a coach does that a lot too. When you're doing all that self doubt, I don't know. A coach says, well, what's the problem? What's stopping you? Let's kind of put your foot in the water a little bit. See what happens. See what it
Nudge.
feels like.
Little nudge, right?
Right. And when you have a coach there saying that to you, it's just somebody else that you're being accountable to. And so when you're doubting yourself, but they're believing in you, maybe I can do it. So for whatever your reason is to want to try it, now you've got the encouragement to try it. So a coach can be very helpful.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
So I did start it way before I started the podcast, like 7 years before I started the podcast. I started coaching.
That is very cool.
Yeah.
One more question for you, because we'll need to wrap it up. I just saw, I'm like, how does the time go by so fast? But I wanted to ask, after all the interviews that you've done in your podcast, what's the first takeaway that pops into your brain that's a big takeaway that you've learned about aging well?
Hmm. That a lot of people are doing it. You start out the podcast and you think, "Oh man, where am I going to find these people to tell their stories and you find them.
It's
And then
incredible.
they start to find you."
Yeah,
And so a lot of people were not visible enough yet. But a lot of people are aging well and figuring it out in many different ways, in research, in writing books, in riding bikes across the country, in setting huge goals for Susan G. Komen walks, just in so many ways, Yvonne. And look at you. I mean, you're doing it too. So, I've met amazing women that are really showing out what it is possible to do in this next chapter of our lives.
I have to say, I think that's my takeaway too. Doing the podcast constantly puts me in the company of people like you. It constantly reminds me of what is possible,
Hmm.
and to see that possibility in front of me keeps me going.
I'm
It's,
glad. I'm glad because you have so much to give to people too.
thank you. Thank you. So, is there anything that you are excited about? And how do people find you for coaching too?
Yeah. So I would say email me and I would share the calendar link, but I'm at Wendy at heyboomer.biz because it started as Hey Boomer. Now it's
Okay.
Boomer Banter.
Okay.
Um, I do have a website which I need to update, which is also called heyboomer.biz, biz, B-I-Z. Um, I'm excited. You know, it's 5 years, right? And so I'm starting to re-envision what the next 5 years are going to look like. I
Mhm.
was working on that some this morning. And so to see where we've been and where I want to take it in another 5 years, in 5 years, I'm going to be 77. Why not? I can still be doing this and
Absolutely.
having fun with it and inspiring people. And so I'm excited to see where my vision is going to go. I don't have specific I have ideas, but I don't have specifics yet
I
because I
kind of
want to
feel like I'm
start.
in the same zone. Yes,
Right?
yes. We're finding our way, right?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so
I
great.
want to be there. I want to be big, but I don't know the tactics to that yet.
That's exciting. I can see, I mean, I don't know that everybody can see you, but for anybody listening to the podcast right now, I'm seeing this little spark in Wendy's eyes right now when she talks about that. And are you taking on new coaching clients? Is
Oh
that,
yeah, for
yeah?
sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Is
And I'm
What's
developing
Next
a
Coaching? Is that the name of your program?
what's next. Yeah.
Okay.
What's next? And I'm developing a little quiz to help you figure out where you're stuck. So
Very
it's a good
handy.
starting place. Yeah. So lots of things happening that are so much fun to do and push the technology fields a little.
Exactly. Well, I want to thank you for a couple of things. I want to thank you for being here today to share your journey and what's brought you to what you're doing. I also want to thank you for putting together the Age Wise Collaborative to help other podcasters come together and support each other. And I know that the work that you're doing to make that collaborative group happen is a heavy lift in a way that not everybody in the world could appreciate. But I look at what you do and putting these calls together between us and assigning people partners for the month. I mean, it's so cool. Everything that you're doing is I'm learning from it and I'm inspired by that as well.
Thank you so much. It's been, it has been some work, but it's also been a lot of fun. And we all learn from each other, which I really love that part of being a group of dynamic women.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank
Well,
you
thank you for
again.
this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will have links in the show notes for anybody listening who wants to connect with Wendy further, listen to her podcast. I'll put a couple of links in the show notes for you so you can absolutely find her. If you're driving right now, you know, I'll have it for you. I got you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Boomer banter. That's what we do.
Exactly. Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you, Yvonne.
Well, there you have it. Huge thanks to Wendy Green for reminding us that we're never done. There's always another adventure ahead. You can find her podcast, Boomer Banter, and her coaching links in the show notes at latebloomerliving.com/podcast. Just look for episode 243. And hey, if this episode gave you a spark, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend who needs a reminder that blooming can happen at any age. And you can help spread the word by leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you're listening there. Until next time, bloom like you mean it, my friend.